Authority. 5, coordinate implementation of population policy and ICPD 25 commitment project. 6, GOK UNICEF Education for Young People Program, State Department for Basic Education. And lastly, Honorable Speaker, Kenya Primary Education Equity in Learning Program, grant number D991KE, Teacher Service Commission. I thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I beg to lay.
Next is Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning. Or the Vice Chair, you have a report. Okay. I think we can move on as we wait for the Chair to come. Next, we can move to the next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements.
First statement we have, Honorable Peter Masara. Yes, what's your point of order, Honorable Ounda?
Honorable Speaker, as a custom in this House since this 13th Parliament, on Wednesday afternoon, a Cabinet Secretary normally comes to answer questions. Honorable Speaker, and answer questions and request for statement. The Cabinet Secretary in charge of roads and related sector was supposed to have come to this House before we went for the recess. We were advised by the Speaker that he had sought the indulgence of the House to skip the session that particular day and come the first Wednesday when House resumes. Honorable Speaker, I have looked at the supplementary order paper and there is no indications at all that the Cabinet Secretary is going to attend or be present in the House. So I just wanted your guidance, Honorable Speaker. This is going to be the second time in a row that the Cabinet Secretary in charge of roads has skipped this particular session, and they probably need to guide us what to do, because these questions are of importance to our constituencies and to the people of Kenya. If the Cabinet Secretaries cannot spare time to come to Parliament, then basically don't know why we had to amend our standing order to ask them to come to the floor of the House and answer questions. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Owundo, you're right. I have a letter here dated 5th November 2024, addressed to the Clerk of the National Assembly, and it is signed by the Cabinet Secretary for Roads and Transport, Davis Chirchir, and he says that I was scheduled to appear before the plenary of the National Assembly on Wednesday, 6th November, which is today. However, I'll be accompanying His Excellency the President to the Republic of Sudan on an official visit on the same day. Owing to this, I'll not be able to attend this important meeting, but he is therefore requests that the meeting be rescheduled to a date that is convenient to the House. And I think the Clerk of the National Assembly has communicated the option of the dates he's supposed to appear. What's your point of order, Honorable Majority Leader?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Just to confirm, yes, it's indeed true. The Cabinet Secretary did write, and I was copied in that letter. And we have also since written to him, requesting him to appear before the House next week, Wednesday, I think 13th of this month, next week on Wednesday, together with the Cabinet Secretary for Education, CS Migosi. But Honorable Speaker, allow me also, Honorable Speaker, now that I have the mic, to also ask members. For instance, if you look at the questions that were being asked, a number of the members whose questions were to be answered are not in the House now. You also, if you look at the order paper today, Honorable Speaker, there are quite a number of members. And I was just looking if I can find the member for Gatanga. He's not here. He has a question to ask. If you look around, look for the member for Embakasi West. Honorable Mark Mwenje, is not here. And he has a question to ask. On and on, I have seen the Honorable Member for Baringo Central, Honorable Kindiki, is here. And we must commend the Honorable Member for Baringo Central. Gonzi Rai, the member for Kinango, not here. Member for Funyula, as always, Honorable Speaker, the member for Funyula is always in the House. He has a question, he is here. Member for Bahati, the Honorable Irene Joki, not here. Member for Malava, the Honorable Malulu Ijendi, he is at his usual seat. He is always there, and is a vice chair of a committee. Honorable Speaker, we were in the House, and I could go on and on and on and on and on. Dick Maungu, not in the House. Honorable Speaker, Honorable Robert Basil, not in the House. Sarah Korere, as always, in the House, and she's here. Oh, Basil is here, the member for Yata, my apologies. Rael Kasiwai, she sits somewhere.
Just let the majority leader
somewhere around there.
finish his
I
point
don't
of
see her.
order.
She's not in the House. Honorable Member for Kajiado South, Samuel Parashina, of course, as always, never in the House. The member for Matuga, who is also a vice chair of the CDF committee, Kasim Tandaza, always in the House and in the House now. Member for Igembe Central, I am on a point of order, Honorable Speaker. Daniel Carido, always in the House, he's here, Honorable Speaker.
The majority leader is on a point of order. Sarah Korere, you will have an opportunity. So
the member for Mwingi West, Charles Ngusia CNN, always in the House, but he's not there now. Member for Kolomani Shinali, usually on and off in the House, is not here. But Honorable Speaker, what point am I making? We were in the leadership conference last week. Honorable Speaker, under the able leadership of the chair of the Parliamentary Service Commission and also our speaker, and part of the issues that were raised by members in that conference is House attendance. And more so, calling on chairs and their vice chairs. Honorable Speaker, this afternoon, you have had to sit there and wait for at least 10 minutes for us to garner quorum. This House has not less than 60 chairs and vice chairs of committees. We only need 50 to transact business. If we add the leadership of the House, we have 70. Honorable Speaker, I counted the chairs who are in the House at the time you asked for the quorum bell to be rung. Only 5 chairs of committees were seated in the House, and about 7 vice chairs. Where were the other 43, Honorable Chair? I want to say, Honorable Chair, Honorable Speaker, I wanted to ask that you remind these chairs and their vice chairs, Honorable Speaker. As we said in Naivasha, we have only another 4 weeks to go for a long recess. But these are the 4 weeks of reckoning. If you are a chair of a committee, you must be in the House at 2:30. If you are a vice chair, you must be in the House at 2:30. There is no reason for the Speaker to come and sit and wait for quorum when there are members who have business to be transacted on the floor, they are not in the House. When we have chairs who should be responding, and this kind of behavior, Honorable Speaker, the member for Imenti Central should know. We are not in a marketplace in Imenti Central for him to walk in and shout that he's here. He knows he should also have been here at 2:30. Honorable Speaker, I was saying it's imperative that we reiterate from your seat, Honorable Speaker, the need for members to be in the House, especially chairs and their vice chairs, because even if all these members who have to ask questions were in the House, Honorable Speaker, and statements, you need those chairs and their vice chairs to respond and tell you when does the member expect an answer. And probably that is why the members who are even coming to ask questions are not here, because there will be nobody to respond to them. And let me tell chairs from both sides of the House. If you are a chair of a committee or a vice chair, please take your work seriously. If you do not, we have another 280 members who can take those positions. Do the honorable thing. If you don't have time for the House, just do the honorable thing. And you know, we're in this season, the season Junet Mohammed calls the season of impeachment. I am not encouraging anyone to impeach anyone. But if need be, please impeach these chairs and their vice chairs if they can't be in the House. Please impeach them. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I think, honorable members, what the honorable majority leader has said is part of what was resolved during the leadership retreat in Mombasa. I know that members have actually proposed that those chairpersons be changed, but I will restrain myself from putting that question until the substantive speaker is in the chair. But meanwhile, before we proceed, what's your member for Kitutu Masaba? What is your point of order? No, please sit down. There's someone else on their feet.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. With all respect to our majority leader, Madam Speaker, I was worried whether the honorable majority leader is in order to knowing very well that our constituents are watching this television. Is it in order for him to name individuals, name by name, reading a list, whereas some of the members whom he has named were here during the morning session all the way to the end, and they are out here coming, so they have not missed their attendance. Some of these naming can be very damaging. Yes, it is a public document whereby they were informed, because if you look at the order paper, there is no CS there. So no one is under obligation to be here to create quorum. If you have a problem to deal with your chairs, you deal with the chairs. If you want to tell us to impeach them, let us impeach. But you cannot go naming us on live TV for not attending. We are elected to be here and we are answerable to our people, but the majority leader is not the prefect to read the names. Thank you, Honorable.
Member for Kitutu Masaba, I don't think any of those chairpersons have given you a brief to hold their brief and to be able to be their advocate. So I think they will speak for themselves. Honorable member for Kitutu Masaba, please be seated. Yes, you do not hold a brief for them. They shall respond on their own behalf. The Honorable Sarah Korere, I will give you an opportunity.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I think I'm in agreement with the majority leader that those people who have been bestowed with leadership must be held accountable for the positions they have been given. And Madam Speaker, again on the cabinet secretaries, you know, Speaker, today, our very good friend and sister, Soipan Tuya, had lost her brother who was being buried today. I was to attend to that funeral, but I cancelled because the minister was appearing before this house to answer, among many questions, the issues of the Doldol-Nanyuki Road, which has been a pain in our flesh for a very long time. So, Speaker, it is also good for these CSs to give us, notice in good time, because we are now just hearing it here. We had the whole of yesterday, and even last Saturday, before we went for recess, it was cancelled the last day. So I think they should also try to just be sensitive, because we have a lot of things. Some members who are appearing on that list, I know, are not here today because they are in Narok attending the same burial. So Majority Leader, just be a bit sensitive and kind to your members.
I think the majority leader has noted that. Honorable member for Kajiado, you are out of order to keep standing up before I give you the opportunity to speak. I was just going in order because by the time you came here, the honorable member for Kitutu Masaba had already requested. The member for the honorable member Sarah Korere had already requested, and so you were third in line. So I think it's okay. I think when you decide to properly request, you press the intervention button, I will give you an opportunity. But as long as you heckle from your seat, and wave your hands at me rudely, then I will not give you the opportunity. Let us proceed. The Honorable Tandaza Kasim, you are next.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My point of order is very straight, and especially to the office of the clerk. It's normally our tradition, because we are representing our people, when you have a question to be answered by the CS, this is a question that is for your people, from your constituency. And we normally, in most cases, alert them that on this day, I'll be on the floor of the House trying to articulate the issues that you've been talking about that has been paining you. Would it not then be in order that once you receive any communication from the CS that will not be available, you also inform those whose questions would be on the floor of the House, so that they can also tell their constituents that this question will not be heard today. Otherwise, you also put us in a difficult situation where you've told people that you are going to represent them, and then it's quiet. It's like, Mheshimiwa, you didn't know what was supposed to be happening, or you are cheating us, you are not representing us, and yet you got the information. Thank you, Honorable.
Honorable Kasim Tandaza, member for Mutuga, you've made a valid point. I think the leadership has taken note of that. The majority leader has taken note of that. And therefore now, I think, and also just the fact that members have said it's good for them to know in due time, I think that has been noted. And I think majority leader will communicate that to members of the executive. And for now, honorable members, allow me to reorder the order paper, that we go to order number 8, and then we can come back to any other statements. But before you make the announcement for order number 8, allow me to do this. Honorable members, allow me I wish you to introduce to you a delegation of 8 members of staff from Suna West National Government Constituency Development Fund Office, who are seated in the public gallery. Honorable members, on my own behalf and that of the National Assembly, I wish to welcome them to Parliament and wish them fruitful deliberations. Thank you. Next order.
Order number 8, motion, report of the Committee of the Whole House on the Kenya Drugs Authority Bill, National Assembly Bill number 54 of 2022. Question to be put.
You want to? Okay, honorable members, we are just, before we go on to that order number 8, I'll allow the member for Suna West to welcome our guests on our behalf. And make it brief.
Madam Speaker, I want to seek your indulgence on a matter that I think is... Hello, Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know, when I saw a black man, I just knew things have changed. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to bring to the attention of the House a matter that is very important. Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, the issue of our main business here is legislation. And one of the biggest predicaments that we have faced on issues of legislation, Mr. Speaker, is the issue of public participation. Public participation. So, Mr. Speaker, I want the House to take note of the ruling of the Supreme Court that happened the other day, Mr. Speaker, on the finance bill that was suspended by the court, Mr. Speaker. And the bench at the Supreme Court did a very thorough work, Mr. Speaker. And I want to congratulate them because they have laid basis and foundation now for a proper public participation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to urge members to read that judgment, Mr. Speaker, because that judgment has really, really helped this country. It has cleared the path for this country now and for Parliament to do proper legislation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, for the last 10 years or so, since the new constitution was enacted, Mr. Speaker, Parliament could not do this business, Mr. Speaker. Any legislation we do here, any act that's assented to by the President, Mr. Speaker, somebody goes to High Court and the High Court declares that act unconstitutional, Mr. Speaker, when in the actual sense, an act could have 73 or even 80 clauses, Mr. Speaker. And instead of a judge declaring the 10 or 15 clauses that someone has a problem with, many times judges have declared acts of parliament unconstitutional, Mr. Speaker. If you read the judgment of the Supreme Court now, Mr. Speaker, and I read that judgment last night, it gave me a lot of hope. And I said I must bring to the attention of members that now the country is going to the right direction in terms of legislation. The Supreme Court said, one of the best things the Supreme Court said is that Parliament doesn't have to convince the public on what they are doing or the legislation. They just need to inform them. Information, Mr. Speaker. You don't have to convince, because we are here to legislate on behalf of Kenyans. We are exercising sovereign power that is delegated to us, Mr. Speaker. So the Supreme Court, in their own wisdom, said that you just need to inform the public. You don't need they don't have to agree with you. Because legislation is not being done in the public, it's being done in the floor of the House. One of the things that has shocked me about public participation, one time, one of the judges declared one of the acts unconstitutional. And he said that the advert that was released to the public was done in English and not Swahili. And himself is doing his judgment in English. He did not do it in Swahili, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, without belaboring the matter, time is ripe now for the public participation bill to come to this floor of the House. The Supreme Court has spoken on it. The Supreme Court has cleared the path. Now we need to get a proper public participation bill on the floor of the House so that we can dispense off with that matter once and for all. Kenyans have suffered. Kenyans have suffered in the sense that any legislation that is made by the representatives is normally declared null and void and unconstitutional by the courts, Mr. Speaker. The courts are legislating through, I don't know how to describe it, through the back door, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, that matter must come to a rest. But I want the majority leader to weigh on this matter. And I also have the issue of femicide, Mr. Speaker. Femicide. Our women are being killed, Mr. Speaker, Kenyeji. Even today, there is one that has been killed and her body parts thrown at Isli, Mr. Speaker. At Isli. Another one, Atlangata. But her origin is from Isli. So, Mr. Speaker, that matter also we need to talk about it, but let the majority leader pronounce himself on the issue of the Supreme Court and public participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Let me first commend the Leader of Minority, the Honorable Junet Mohammed, for raising this issue on the matter of the judgment, and also take this opportunity to commend the Supreme Court. Because, Honorable Speaker, the architecture of a constitution, and we must thank God that under the 2010 Constitution, the Supreme Court came into being. Because, Honorable Speaker, as an advisory court also, they have now set the pace, as the Honorable Junet Mohammed says, for us to be able to enact substantive legislation to guide our public participation exercises in the legislative processes of this House and even those of the other House and our county assemblies, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to agree with the Leader of Minority that in line with Article 2 of our Constitution, that says that the people may exercise their sovereign power either directly or through their democratically elected representatives. And those democratically elected representatives are the men and women who sit in this House and in the Senate, Honorable Speaker. And more so in this House, because it is this House that represents the people. And that is why you will find also in this Constitution, many of the bills that become law can emanate from this House and become law without going to the other House, to the Senate, Honorable Speaker. Because we represent the people while our Senate colleagues represent our counties. And that is why those bills that touch on counties and county governments must, as a matter of the Constitution, go to the other House. And may also emanate from that House, but must be completed in this House. And that is why I've always argued, Honorable Speaker, since 2013, when we began this new system with the bicameral parliament, that we don't need to belabor which House is superior to the other. If one house can enact legislation and it becomes law by itself, and the other house cannot enact legislation and it becomes law by itself, it has to go to the other house, then it goes without saying which house is the upper house, Honorable Speaker. But that is not the point, Honorable Speaker. The point is that public participation has been abused by a number of our judges, especially in the High Court. And I must commend the Supreme Court and those other judges who have exercised judicial restraint in making determination as to what constitutes good public participation. And I've read previous judgments on qualitative and quantitative analysis of what is good public participation, Honorable Speaker. But the Supreme Court now has put it very well. And I want to agree with Honorable Junet that it was misconstrued that public participation is a referendum. And in fact, during the public participation exercise of the impeachment process of the former deputy president, there are those who argued that way. And there are those who believe that we are going to carry out a referendum exercise. Public participation is to go out and collate the views of the public. But it's still up to the members of parliament to consider the views of the members of the public. And they may not necessarily be the right views. And you know, Honorable Speaker, it is said that opinions are as many as, I don't want to say what they say out there, but you know what they say, that opinions are as varied as you know what. And everybody has theirs. Therefore, as many views as we will get from the public, Honorable Speaker, the onus is still on us as the lawmakers to consider all those views, balance those views against what the legislation that we are making seeks to achieve, Honorable Speaker. And I'll take you back, Honorable Speaker, to the Finance Bill 2024. And Honorable Speaker, because I have seen the CS of National Treasury bring in a number of proposals that were very good proposals that were carried in the Finance Bill 2024, Honorable Speaker. We went out to collect views of the public through the public participation exercise that the member for Molo, the Honorable Kimani Kuria, spent, I think, close to 14 days seated in County Hall, listening to Kenyans. And Kenyans came in their numbers to give their views. They said they do not want taxation on bread. They said they do not want to see taxation on motor vehicles. Kimani Kuria and the Finance Committee did a report which was tabled and adopted by this House in second reading, agreeing with members of the public that there should be no taxation on bread, no taxation on motor vehicles. Kenyans out there from the manufacturing industry, Honorable Speaker, industry, appeared before the Finance Committee and told them that we are killing our manufacturing industry in Kenya because we are encouraging more of imports than local manufacturing. And it was players in the manufacturing industry through KEPSA, through the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, that brought proposals that would protect our local manufacturing industry, made proposals to levy excise duty on completed or finished products being imported from China, the Far East, Europe, including diapers and sanitary towels. But what happened, Honorable Speaker? The public were incited to believe that this House was levying tax on all diapers, on all sanitary towels, and you will remember our young daughters telling us in their parlance out there how our Bunge hata hawataki tunyeshe sasa. You know, Honorable Speaker, how embarrassing when we watched our daughters, our teenage daughters, telling us that hatutaki wanyeshe. Whereas it is them that we sought to protect. It is our young mothers, our young daughters, our sisters we sought to protect from cheap, completed products of sanitary towels, which nobody can authenticate how hygienic they are. The standards that they've been manufactured under in the West and in the Far East, Honorable Speaker. And some of these Far East countries, Honorable Speaker, you know, they have no standards you get what you pay for. And it is that we sought to levy excise duty on, so that we protect that local manufacturer who is manufacturing sanitary towels in Mlolongo, another one in Ruiru, another one in Juja, another one in Nakuru, Honorable Speaker. It is the farmer in Western Kenya and Luo Nyanza and parts of Nyanza, Honorable Speaker, that we sought to protect, who has now been given cotton seed, BT cotton seed, to produce cotton for the value addition of these manufacturing industries, Honorable Speaker. It is the Kenyan youth who are on the streets we sought to protect, to create jobs for them in those factories here, Honorable Speaker. But what did we do? We were told, reject. We rejected, we lost jobs. We rejected, we exported jobs to the Far East. No wonder, Honorable Speaker, today, when CS Mutua announces 3,000 jobs in Qatar, 30,000 Kenyans turn up at KICC. I want to plead with the Kenyan people, and more so our fourth state, Honorable Speaker. Let us be responsible in how we communicate to our people, because we end up misleading our people, and at times even us as political leaders, we are guilty, because we end up saying what we think is popular with the public, but not what is right. And I've said here, Honorable Speaker, before, what is right is not necessarily what is popular, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, in terms of public participation, I want to ask all our committees, when we embark on public participation, our work is to listen to the views of the public and balance it against the legislative proposals that we have and against the policies that we seek to anchor that legislation on, Honorable Speaker. Because it is only you who, upon being elected, like the member for Kajiado South, the people of Kajiado South believe that the member of Kajiado South is the best amongst their people, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, because he's among the best of Kajiado South constituents, they entrust him to come and make laws on their behalf. And therefore, they expect the member for Kajiado South or the member for Kikuyu to know better. And by knowing better, to be able to know this legislative proposal that is before the House is anchored on the policy of import substitution. And therefore, you must balance the question of import substitution, the policy of import substitution, against the legislative or the tax proposals being made vis-a-vis the interests of business people who are importing cheap products that endanger our women, our young girls, Honorable Speaker, and it is only these honorable men and women in this House who can do that. Therefore, the Supreme Court has men and women, Honorable Speaker, who weigh that will get moving.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I also want to join my colleagues, the minority leader and the majority leader. Number one, in commending and appreciating the judgment made by the highest bench, the Supreme Court. As far, Honorable Speaker, there was, like the minority leader has said, this can only be related to a study in jurisprudence, Honorable Speaker, that you and I know on a particular case. We call it, Honorable Speaker, has brought a lot of confusion within our high courts and within our courts, Honorable Speaker, where one judge's view in the high court in Kajiado, another judge's view in Kisii, another judge's view in Kerugoya, another one in Mombasa, and another one in South Mogrango. Very soon we'll get a high court in South Mogrango. We are lucky to have a magistrate court so far. Honorable Speaker, when you read such laws, you will then be left wondering, and this House will be left wondering, which particular judgment would you, want to refer to when creating your own jurisprudence in terms of making the public participation worthwhile, Honorable Speaker? And that is why it is very important for this Supreme Court to have come with a clear distinction on what this House on what this House ought to do in terms of public participation. Because I was mesmerized by definitions of what a quality. I read one judgment that said what was a quality public participation. The parameters one created, what we are suffering from, Honorable Speaker, is actually what I will call judicial activism, where some people, and I say this with tremendous respect to members of the judiciary, where some members of the judiciary, Honorable Speaker, decided to be activists and populist, start making populist decisions. In fact, you'll be forgiven if you actually predict the outcome and then it comes exactly as it is, because you would see conversation on social media, or now a judge would interpret this public participation direction, and the following day when you read that judgment, it is as exactly as it was written by some people on social media. I mean, this is mere judicial activism, Honorable Speaker. And the direction the Supreme Court has actually given us as far as public participation is concerned, it is a right jurisprudence. But again, I challenge this House to expedite the process of creating this law on public participation and create parameters. In as much as now we are using the jurisprudence that has been created, Honorable Speaker, it is important for this House to expedite such. I think the chairman is here and is well noting, and then we expedite such process so that we do not have such similar confusions in future, Honorable Speaker, where the same procedure used on a particular bill is rendered mute, while there's a similar procedure that has been used on a different bill has gone through a similar procedure, passed and enacted, and it's now law. That kind of confusion, Honorable Speaker, couldn't be explained. We had lost quality on making our jurisprudence in courts, and we really must commend the honorable judges for coming up with such very serious directions as far as this jurisprudence is concerned. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Justice and Legal Affairs Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
I've not allowed you to speak. Yeah, it takes the speaker to recognize you. When the speaker doesn't and you insist, you become disorderly and it may cost your presence in this afternoon. Yes, so you are not yet recognized. Let Honorable Murugara proceed.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue of public participation is we allowed the Supreme Court for the interpretation and the guidance it has given to the House and to Kenyans as regards what exactly is public participation and to what extent should this House consider views collected from the public during public participation. Indeed, it is true, many people think that when we go for, we should be collecting views and votes so that if the public votes against whatever it is we are proposing, then it fails. Nothing is far from the truth than that, because the fact remains public participation is purely to ensure that our public is well informed as regards the legislative proposals we have here or whatever action Parliament is taking, so that the public does not plead ignorance at any time. What entails public interest, all this is going to come before the House. We have to prepare ourselves so that we can enact one of the best laws in the country, guided by the judiciary, so that we produce an act of Parliament on the public participation which is acceptable across. Thank you very much.
Honorable Kimani Kuria, you want to speak to this? I hope you are not laying. Okay.
So, Honorable Chair, Honorable Speaker, I want to join my colleagues in celebrating the Solomonic wisdom of the ruling by the Supreme Court of the Republic of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, the reason why the finance bills for the last 2 years have become a subject of discussion in the whole country is because the Departmental Committee of Finance and National Planning made a deliberate decision that we would engage members of the public to seek their views and to have their voices heard on the matters that are going to affect their lives and matters that are going to affect our economy, Speaker. I, however, noticed, Honorable Speaker, that during the process, perhaps what we should have started with was civic education on what is a law-making process and how is a law-making process done. Because, Honorable Speaker, we saw even very educated people display their ignorance on the process of lawmaking. Honorable Speaker, I dare say that we had one of the most progressive reports that the Committee of Finance and National Planning Committee tabled in this House, and this Honorable House approved at the third reading. The issues that members of the public were raising had sufficiently been addressed in our report. And how we are finding now, Honorable Speaker, now, is that those matters that should have been passed in, for example, reducing the weight of taxes on payslips by making these statutory deductions like SHA and housing levy become tax allowable for payee, were matters that we had considered. Honorable Speaker, we have thousands, if not millions, of Kenyans that were locked out of tax amnesty, a matter that we had considered and extended the tax amnesty to next year, where we are saying you pay your principal tax, or you have a commitment to your principal tax, and you have your interest and penalties all forgiven. But, Honorable Speaker, these matters were left, and we are hoping that as we consider several other legislative proposals that are coming to this House, that both the House and the members of the executive should consider civic education. And I'm happy because even our civil societies and our activists and even upcoming politicians have now taken upon themselves to understand how laws are made in this country. Honorable Speaker, even as we had the previous discussion about the impeachment of the Deputy President, there were questions about comparing how the process of assumption of office of a Deputy President was compared to that of the President of Botswana. Honorable Speaker, the difference is we have our 2010 Constitution, we have several laws in this country that spearhead such a program. And until a time when we change our Constitution or we change those laws of Parliament, those particular statutes and laws, then that will be the procedure. And therefore, I'm urging Kenyans that during the various respective legislative proposals that are coming to this House, the bills that are coming to this House, let us follow our Constitution, let us follow our laws to do it according to the laws of the Republic of Kenya. And let us take time to understand the lawmaking process, because unfortunately, we have no shortcut, because we must adhere to our 2010 Constitution as passed by the majority of people in this country. I beg to submit, Honorable Speaker.
As I will only give 2 more members the opportunity to comment, then we can go back to main business. The Deputy Majority Leader, to be followed by the Honorable Beatrice Elachi.
Give me the mic. Honorable Speaker, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. I want to weigh in what the Honorable Junaid has said about the ruling at the Supreme Court. Honorable Speaker, I want to say this, that the Supreme Court actually asserted the doctrine of separation of powers. The doctrine of separation of powers. The Supreme Court, what it has done is to say, Parliament has work cut for itself, allow Parliament to do its work. The judiciary has work cut for itself, and this ruling will allow this country to move forward, government programs to move forward. Otherwise, the article on public participation became the Waterloo in the Constitution itself, because the Constitution could not move forward, implementation of laws could not move forward, because it was always taken back by the issue of public participation. Honorable Speaker, if you allow me to say this, the High Court has continuously abused Article 165, 3D1 of the Constitution, which says that the High Court has jurisdiction on the interpretation of laws, including whether the law is consistent to the Constitution. That Article 165, Honorable Speaker, has been abused by the High Court in such a way that they became a supervisor of the legislature, which is not the role of the courts in this country. The courts cannot be supervisors. They have been given the mandate in the law, Article 165, to check and interpret to the extent to find whether the law is actually inconsistent with the Constitution. And I want to say this. The separation of powers must be respected. Parliament must be given opportunity to work. And this Parliament cannot be supervised by the whole High Court, but the High Court has a role to ensure what we pass here is consistent to the Constitution. Honorable Speaker, they picked the issue of public participation and wanted every law to fall on the sword of public participation. But I want to thank the ladies and gentlemen at the Supreme Court for asserting that we need to give Parliament an opportunity to work by actually giving that ruling, Honorable Speaker. I think Parliament and the nation. Otherwise, I would also say we also need to ensure that the courts do public participation on every ruling that they want to make, so that it becomes cross-cutting. But I want to join Honorable Junaid for bringing this up, Honorable Speaker, and I want to thank the court and the Chief Justice for ensuring that now the issue of public participation will not be allowed to happen. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable members, we need your numbers. For those who are leaving, we want to request for your patience because we need your numbers in order number 8. You remember we re-altered the order paper, awaiting some good numbers. So may I request that we allow Honorable Beatrice Elachi to say something to this, then we go back to the orders which require your numbers. We ask for your patience to stay within.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me also appreciate our minority leader for bringing this matter. Mr. Speaker, for me, I want to thank the Supreme Court because they've gone back to the act of the Supreme Court. That indeed the purpose of why we had the Supreme Court in this country and we really wanted as an aspiration for this country was which court will be there for public interest. And when you look at the objects of the Supreme Court Act, it is very clear, especially at C, that they need to develop rich jurisprudence that respects Kenyan's history and traditions and facilitate its social, economic, political growth. And Mr. Speaker, when you look at all the cases we've gone through, one of the things that the High Court has always disregarded is public interest, this good. You find that in a judgment, Mr. Speaker, this is the same arm of government that has already received resources, it has spent that resources, and then you nullify the whole bill. But you are an arm of government that is spending also. And then there you wonder, what just happened in our country? So for me, we have gone through a rough time of public participation until the last one of Kerugoya, we had to go now to constituencies. At least we've come now to an agreement of both arms that indeed you need to notify, you need to ensure. Remember, Mr. Speaker, Kenyans are not the type where you'll force them to come for public participation. And some will come and they will want you to facilitate them or to go. So it is not something they come willingly. So it is something that has really hurt many of the decisions that we have made. But also, just as I said in the morning, there is need also now we speak to the Senate. Because most of these cases, it is not about the courts. It is about us ourselves taking each other to court, which we have to now rethink. But lastly, we need to go back to court to appeal also the case of CDF to the Court of Appeal. As much as we know we are going to change it, it is important to appeal that there is a court that will understand for public interest, a law that has been there that has served for more than 25 years.